Okay, I'm assuming that means we're recording and we're functioning like we should be. It's a regular assembly meeting of July 20th, 2020 at 6 p.m. We'll call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
You bet. Jay?
Here.
Bob?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Brandy?
Here.
Taylor?
Here.
Chelsea?
Here.
Jeff?
Here. Okay, we have a full assembly this evening, and it's now time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And it's now time for approval of some minutes. We have presented to us approval for the regular and special assembly meetings, and then for March 16th, a regular meeting, March 20th, a special meeting, March 22nd, a special meeting, March 25th, a special meeting, April 6th, a regular meeting as well as a special meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes unless somebody has changes to be made to them.
So moved. Second.
Okay, and if there's no changes, all those in favor of approving the minutes as presented for those meetings, say aye.
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 Okay, opposed? Okay, I hear none, so those minutes are approved. It's now time for any amendments or approval of today's meeting agenda, so I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes or the meeting agenda as presented.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Member Michi.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to have, if possible, a brief report from Incident Commander Hagerman about how things are going with the IC network, and just a brief report.
Yeah, I guess we could, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, just before we start the discussion, if there is any, we could probably add that under board, commission, and committee reports, or report of other officers. We'll add that under 11 if that works for people. And does that sound acceptable to the assembly?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Up.
Okay, so all those in favor, since it's a motion and we have to take action on it, if there's no other discussion, will the clerk please call the roll on the amendment?
Yes. Chelsea?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes. Okay, so remind me, Debbie, if I don't remember when we get to item 11 on the agenda, or Mr. Hagerman, you can just chime in. Is there any other amendments to tonight's agenda?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm not sure where this would go, but this may be the wrong spot, but I was wondering if we could make a motion to strike under 14A Ordinance 2020-19 and have it tabled until such time as we could have a town hall meeting on this thing. It sounds like it's getting pretty contentious.
I would believe that would be a topic we would discuss after we get a motion and a second and we start discussion for that particular item. I don't think we will.
Okay.
That would be my read on that. So, Clerk Thompson, does that sound?
Yes, I
That
agree.
sounds like the best place to address. Pardon me?
Yes, I agree with you, Mayor Jensen.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Member Norheim, are you okay with that? I mean, that's what we probably, that's the right protocol. So, if there's no other amendments proposed amendments to tonight's agenda, I would, except for the one that Member Meacham made me pass, I would entertain a motion to approve as amended.
So moved.
Second. Clerk, call the roll.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to item 5 on this evening's agenda, which is public hearings. There are none listed today. There are no bid awards, which is item 6. The next item is persons to be heard related to the agenda. And before we get started on that, if there are any people that are going to call in and testify, would remind you that there will be a 5-minute limit, and I will ask the clerk to keep track of the time on that. And be respectful. We're talking to the entire assembly. Don't address one particular assembly member or any person that would be involved in your testimony. So with that being said, Clerk Thompson, are there any people in the queue for calling in on persons to be heard related to items on today's agenda?
Yes, Mayor Jensen, there are. Mario, if you could please unmute Nancy Berg.
Hello?
Hi, Nancy. You're coming in loud and clear. Please state your name and who you represent.
Sure. Nancy Bergen, I represent myself. I wanted to say I sent a letter to the Assembly. It did not get in the packet because of the timeline. So I thought I would call up and talk a little bit about it. First of all, I think the way that we're handling meetings right now because of the COVID makes it very difficult for the public to feel like they're being heard. And I know it has nothing to do with you all, but I hope that we can come back to in-person meetings with, social distancing and whatever as soon as possible. I'd also like to hear from the borough manager about why, this is regarding ordinance 2020-19, why is this coming up now? Why do we need to do it? But in general, I'd be in favor of the updates. I think it's more specific than the code that we have now. It's got the 7-day window for any emergency operations, which would have happened with the present COVID pandemic. It gives the manager a designated time to act quickly in a situation as we've been through. And of course, we all remember when Steve nominated Carl to be the incident commander. It was because Steve was quarantined. So that was exactly the reason that this, I believe, that part of this was enacted or trying to be enacted. I don't see anywhere in the ordinance where it gives the borough the authority to round up firearms for our children. I believe that the Assembly and those who have hired and approve of each year have the best interests of our town in their hearts and minds. And researching online, I found that this type of ordinance is very common in almost every municipality. It would help us in times of riots, tsunamis, earthquakes, things that could happen in Alaska. So thank you for your consideration, and we don't always contact you when we're in favor of something or things are going well. So I hope that you will consider my testimony. Thank you.
So thank you, Ms. Berg, for your testimony. Debbie, can you hold off just 1 second? I've got to leave the room for a minute.
Sure, you bet.
I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. I'm back. The delay was that after my shower this evening, I forgot to put my hearing aids in. That's why I couldn't hear as well. So technical difficulty on my end. So can you please unmute the next person, Debbie?
Absolutely. Mario, could you please unmute Marge Oinus? Are you on there, Marge?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, you're coming in fine. Can you please state your name and who you represent, Marge, and then give your testimony?
Yes. I'm Marge Oinus, and I'm just speaking for myself in regards to Ordinance 2020-19. And I just have some clarifications to ask. Is this the time to ask them, or some other time?
That probably would have been during the public hearing. I think this is generally just public testimony for persons to be heard related to the agenda. If it's a simple question, I could try to answer it.
Okay. On 3.72.030 under emergency response, under A, I believe it's A, or no, a declaration issued here under. I'm not sure that I understand if the Assembly modifies or terminates the declaration, said modification or termination shall be prospective only. What does prospective mean here?
Okay, so I think after this explanation, we'll probably not give explanations again, but in this testimony. So, Mr. Hagerman, can you explain that language?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. This is Carl Hagerman. I'm not sure that I can explain that language. I got to be completely honest with you. I'm not sure what the term perspective means in this context.
Okay, Mark, is there anyone that can explain this to Marjorie?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I might.
Yes, Mr. Memberman, go ahead.
Yes, I asked this particular question to our borough attorney. The answer that I received was that, let's say that that ordinance was in effect for some period, for a couple days. During that period, let's say that there was a citation given, for sake of example. And then that it ended. What that means is that citation would still stand even though even though the period closed, the citations or the actions taken before would stand.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. I have a couple more. I do have a couple more, but should I come and just talk to someone privately instead over the phone?
I think that's how we're going to do this, Marge. I think this time is to be used for public testimony on your feelings, whether you're in favor or against this ordinance, or if you'd like to see changes. If we started answering everybody's questions, this could go on for quite some time. So you could probably contact the manager or Mr. Hagerman, and they can get any explanation you need.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, then.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, the timing's not. Okay, Clerk Thompson, can you put the next person to be unmuted, please?
Yes, hello, Mario. Could you please unmute Candy Woodworth?
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
You're coming in very clear. Can you please state your name and who you represent?
Okay. My name is Candy Woodworth, and I represent myself. I would like to speak on agenda item 15C regarding Frederick Point East properties. I wanted to understand the department policies regarding Frederick Point East, so I contacted them. From the fire department and EMS, I spoke to Sandy Dixon, the director. She was familiar with the location of Frederick Point East and that it is located in Service Area 1. Service Area 1 is the primary response area for the department and the EMS. Their desire is to respond to all emergencies. However, because the Frederick Point East location is remote, the time of response is more comparable to responses that would be for properties that are remote, area-wide locations. She explained the assessment of risk versus benefit that would determine response and the importance of keeping the responders safe. These would have to be implemented in the Frederick Point East situation. In winter, the only road, Service Road 6204, that comes the closest to Frederick Point East is not plowed, but is snowed in for 4 to 5 months on average. Therefore, no vehicles would be able to respond. A boat response would need to be assessed in regard to the Frederick Sound conditions, along with the weather conditions. Overall, response times would not be comparable to in-town response times. She did express concern that Frederick Point East was placed in Service Area 1 at Borough formation. At the police department, I spoke to dispatch. Dispatch was not quite sure of the location of Frederick Point East. I was told that the police response policy is to a turnaround or cutoff line, which is located 11 miles from Sandy Beach Road. The location of Frederick Point East is further than the police cutoff line. Therefore, any calls for Frederick Point East would be referred to the state trooper. So at least for the police department, there is an invisible line for response, but that line does not coincide with the boundary of Service Area 1. At the sanitation department, I talked to Aaron, the supervisor. According to Borough policy, it is mandatory that all properties in Service Area 1 have trash receptacles, recycle, and have trash pickup. However, I was informed that trash receptacles, recycling, and trash pickup are not provided for Frederick Point East because the only road, 6204, is not borough maintained and is not snowplowed in the winter. Now, if we look at the borough charter under 14.04, criteria for establishing service areas, it states, quote, service areas shall be established according to criteria of need and economic operating efficiency, unquote. The facts are clear. The 55 lots in the undeveloped subdivision of Frederick Point East are remote. The lots are used for seasonal recreational use, except for one full-time couple, Don and Jenny Cummins. There is no need for on-site services. It would be economically unfeasible for the borough to spend millions of dollars to provide the infrastructure necessary to provide Frederick Point East with the same services provided to other Service Area 1 properties. The Frederick Point East should not be taxed unfairly at the Service Area 1 full operational mill rate when it is not provided all the services afforded the Service Area 1 status. Frederick Point East subdivision has more in common with remote area-wide properties and needs to be taxed fairly on an area-wide basis only. Therefore, I am requesting that the Assembly direct borough staff to complete the ordinance that would remove Frederick Point East from Service Area 1. That ordinance that was already drafted by the borough attorney and was given to Clerk Thompson in December. This would allow the Assembly to proceed with the requirements necessary to move the ordinance forward to give the Service Area 1 voters the opportunity to decide the issue on an October 6th ballot proposition. Please give the Service Area 1 voters a voice in the Frederick Point East issue. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your testimony. Clerk Thompson, will you ask for the next person to be unmuted, please?
Yes, Mario, please unmute Donna Marsh.
Thank you for your time and for the opportunity to speak, Mayor Jensen and Borough Assembly. I represent only myself here. At this third and final reading of Proposal 2020-19, I would urge you to reconsider your course and not pass this bill into code. It's very similar to the old ordinance under the former city government, but my heartburn regarding this is that it extends the heavy hand of government in a number of ways and by making this permanent. I would propose that this, as written, be tabled and entirely redrawn. On June 5th, 1976, in southeast Idaho, the Teton Dam failed, sending millions of gallons of a 17-mile-long reservoir flooding across communities along the Snake River Plain, destroying thousands of homes, businesses, and farmland downstream. It wasn't the government that was the hero that day. It was the good people of southeast Idaho who sounded alarms, rescued lives, worked to prevent further damage to towns, livestock, etc. along the flood's path. Later, some government officials applauded the quick thinking of local volunteer units, and in the subsequent days and months of cleanup and restoration, it was local people doing what they do best, helping their neighbors with life-saving measures such as food, rebuilding, mucking mud from homes, helping restore barns, and businesses that had been submerged in floodwaters. While I'm not undermining the efforts of local government officials in that emergency, it was the people in the affected communities who rallied first without needing the regulations to roll up their sleeves. Neither did they shelter in place while the government rallied its resources, running red tape bureaucracy and political wrangling first. I've lived in Petersburg for over 34 years, raising my children here, volunteering in various organizations, and I've had the privilege of working alongside amazing people. I've seen and been part of much smaller scale rescues. I believe that we in Petersburg have much the same kind of concerns for our neighbors and fellow citizens. However, with this proposed ordinance, those kinds of rescues and volunteer responses would be essentially impossible because we as citizens would be prohibited rendering aid in emergencies unless the local government granted permission first, and we were allowed to leave our homes to do so. That kind of overreach is unacceptable. It seems to me that the borough has not been hamstrung in its implementation of its mandates and rules during this present situation because it didn't have the proposal already as code. The manager acted, the assembly acted, people were put in place to carry out the wishes of those in charge, but unfortunately without much public input. The wording, as written in this proposal, is enough to turn common sense upside down. Again, thank you for the opportunity to share my views.
Thank you for your testimony, Mrs. Roche. Clerk Thompson, will you please have Mario unmute the next speaker?
Yes, Mario, please unmute Lloyd Tinas.
Hello, Council. Okay, am I on?
Yes, you're on. Can you please state your name and who you represent?
Yes, I am Lloyd Tinas. I pastor Bethesda Fellowship with my wife. I'm also the president of the local Petersburg Christian Ministerial Association. I've been contacted by Pastors Nathan Lopez and Pastor Stan Love from the Bible Church and presented this letter to read to the Assembly. First, we want to thank the Council for your service, and we know that you want what is best for our community. We're calling in because we feel that many of the proposed changes to Borough Code Chapter 3.72 concerning us is an overreach into our constitutional liberties as U.S. citizens. As pastors, we have further concerns about the imposition orders in 3.72.060A3 that prohibits gatherings of persons in excess of a specified number. And here's some questions that arise. How many active cases determine the need to enact this ordinance? How many people would be allowed in general or in relation to the space available? What are the criteria of how long the prohibition would last? Is it, in fact, legal for the local borough to do this, given First Amendment rights? But beyond those questions are our real concerns as pastors. We note that from Friday's KFSK call-in show that the focus leaning was toward mandates or guidelines for wearing masks and a limited number of people at gatherings. It's that limiting of gatherings that impacts churches in negative ways. Here's a few requests we have as pastors. We need accurate and unbiased information regarding the present risk to Petersburg so that we can make responsible decisions that affect our congregations, which allows the mission and vision of the church to continue in a safe and responsible way. We need to be able to make our own operational and safety decisions during any given threat in relation to how, when, and under what circumstances we gather at church, and for which type of meetings we offer. Our church services are not a gathering that is lightly canceled for any reason, but especially by the government. Note the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The framers saw the value of religious faith in society, and this is our genuine and continued experience. Our right to assemble must be protected, except in the case of extreme and dire circumstances. In Petersburg, churches cannot offer curbside or takeout services. Most are doing a combination of live streaming and in-sanctuary worship services. This allows us to voluntarily limit our gathering size, while attempting to include those who must remain separated due to risk factors or preference. Churches have been deemed essential by our government. In the same way as a hospital treats primarily the physically ill, churches, through the corporate gatherings, treat spiritual illness. Many of the Petersburg residents have dealt with emotional, mental, spiritual effects of the lockdowns, and many more have experienced fear, hopelessness, loneliness, division and despair, and even anger. These are very real stresses that bring harm to people in Petersburg. The church is equipped and ready to go and do ministry to these people, to these needs. If 3.72.060A3 were to pass into ordinance, corporate worship services would be in the hands of one individual or a selected representative or even the Borough Assembly. During the declaration of a civil emergency, for the following reasons, we as pastors feel that this matter of gathering together should be left to our church leadership, which holds people's overall safety and spiritual, mental, and emotional health at highest regard. The physical gathering of the church cannot be replaced by the online streaming experience. Several attendees of our churches struggle with the technology gap to join online services and have expressed that they're not served well by the online experience. They express the need to meet in person at the church building. We fully recognize the desire to limit gatherings is to reduce the spread of the COVID-19. As pastors, we share that desire and are committed to protecting the physical well-being of all who attend church services to avoid community spread. We believe we have the wisdom and the cooperation of our church bodies to do that at our discretion. Please vote no today and allow us as leaders in our community to lead and make decisions for those we lead. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Keenest, for your testimony today. Clerk Thompson, will you please ask for the next speaker to be unmuted?
Yes, Mario, please unmute Susan Borough.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, members of the Assembly, can you hear me?
Yes, and there is some background noise too.
Nothing here.
Susan, you need to try to get rid of the background noise, please.
There's nobody here. There's nothing on here. That was a baby crying on somebody else's phone.
I'm sorry about the confusion. Whoever, I don't know who that could be unless it's one of our assembly members or someone calling in, so maybe we can try to avoid that confusion. Sorry, can you please continue?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the Assembly, this is Susan Borough. I'm calling for myself, a concerned citizen. First, let me say that I would rather be at an Assembly meeting facing y'all. And in regards to the Petersburg Borough Ordinance 2020-19, first and foremost, this is not about COVID-19. It may have spurred the Assembly to create this new ordinance, but in the end, it's about our community safety and welfare if there ever is such an emergency. Please do not vote using COVID-19 issue today to sway your vote for this ordinance. I want to respond to a few of the Assembly's remarks last week. It was mentioned that Assembly members are a civilian oversight group. In my opinion, that means that you work for the citizens who vote you into office and that you should be listening to their opinion before making this decision. The example of the IC calling an emergency because he heard a car backfire. We do not worry about the incident commander calling an emergency over a backfire. What we worry about is what the incident commander, what is in the ordinance that he would be allowed to do. Once the emergency is called, it does not matter how short a disaster is. It only takes minutes to put abusive laws, etc., in place that could remove our rights as citizens of the United States. For example, gun confiscation. Another Assembly member stated not to allow businesses to open fully until they have a plan in place. This is clearly a decision based on COVID-19 and not about this ordinance. But in reference to that, being a business owner, I have not seen one business who has not done their due diligence in protecting the citizens of our community. Yet another Assembly member said he was voting for the ordinance, but he was not in search of power. This fact is, he may not be an Assembly member in 2023, and that new member may have a differing agenda. Now back to the items in the ordinance. Again, I ask about this clause 3.72.040. Any proclamation issued pursuant to this chapter shall have the force of law and shall supersede any conflicting provision of law during an emergency declared pursuant to this chapter. I have never got an answer when I asked before. This is very important because it is not mentioning just state law. I guess that would be one thing. Nowhere in the state statute AS 26.23.140 does it give anyone the authority to make any law that should supersede our constitutional rights as citizens of the United States of America. In regards to 3.72.050, dissemination and posting of emergency proclamations. Proclamations, notices, and warnings should have designated places where they will be posted. Ferry terminal, post office, grocery stores, all the harbors, the courthouse, for example. This should be planned out now and not wait until there is an emergency and we don't know where to go to find out information. I am not opposed to a new ordinance, but would like to see one that does not give anyone an overreach and one that very explicitly tells me where to go to get information in an emergency. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Bell, for your testimony, and sorry about the confusion with the background noise. I wasn't aware it wasn't your phone. So, Clerk Johnson, how many more people are in the queue to testify? And then can you unmute the next caller, please?
Yes, I believe there are two more callers. And Mario, if you could please unmute Dana Tinas.
I'm Dana Tinas, representing myself regarding the emergency ordinance. Please tell me what about the progression of this emergency order vote has been in accord with representative constitutional government. Two issues I see with this ordinance at a 30,000-foot level. Number one, I haven't seen the public demand for these measures some of you wish to impose. In fact, I've seen the opposite. You are our representatives, not our rulers, so you should take our objections into account. Number two, I have asked several times but have yet to receive an answer. Where in either the U.S. Constitution or the State of Alaska Constitution can be found the authority to make a proclamation that supersedes existing law? And I would like an answer to that. I keep asking and nobody comes up with one.
Earlier we had someone who had a question, Ms. Tina sent it. This isn't really a place for questions and answers. I would ask whoever would be the proper person to answer this question to reach out to you as soon as possible and try to answer your question. So I don't know who would be the right one to answer that, so hopefully I will get some information on that. So if you have more testimony, can you please continue?
This question at least 3 times. I don't know who.
I don't believe is the proper venue or part of the agenda for answering questions. This is for your public testimony.
Yeah, no. I'd be happy to receive a letter explaining it to me. All right, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will do my best to see that you get a response. Thank you.
Mayor Jensen, I can make sure that happens tomorrow.
That would be nice. Thank you. Can you unmute the next speaker, please?
Yes, Mario, please unmute David Beebe.
Hi, my name is David Beebe. I'm representing myself. And I have some questions regarding this meeting, this remarkable rendezvous in which our sole representative in D.C. and sole state senator of our district announced that they happen to be planning to be traveling together on the senator's yacht through Southeast Alaska.
Does this have anything to do, Mr. Beebe, with items related to today's agenda? That's where we're at on the agenda today.
Yes, it does.
Can you please explain how?
As it relates to the Borough discussion today, Borough business discussion,
also related to the report?
It's odd that it was discussed at the Borough discussion for the mayor's report. I can't give my testimony. I find that particularly odd.
Well, this isn't really an item on today's agenda. If you want to call in under the next item, item 8, persons to be heard on topics unrelated to today's agenda, this is not an agenda item. And it's just all it is my report on Congressman Young's visit.
So suppose that's an agenda item, just out of curiosity. If it's on the mayor's report.
Okay, I guess we'll start your testimony over again, and can you, without degrading anybody's credibility, continue?
I'm not degrading anybody's testimony or credibility with my testimony. I am simply attempting to address multiple issues that I have to choose between now at this juncture for my limited 5 minutes, and I think it's inappropriate to call into question any public testimony that deals directly with any agenda item in tonight's meeting.
Please continue with your direction then.
And I have some questions regarding this meeting, this remarkable rendezvous in which our sole representative in D.C. and sole state senator of our district announced that they happen to be planning to be traveling together on the senator's yacht through Southeast Alaska. Secondly, I'm wondering how it happened that they only had time to meet with their special interest constituency, because we are really talking about a highly controversial subject matter, as it has been affectionately referred to as the $40 million road to nowhere. And the public dismay and disappointment crosses the entire political spectrum during a state of protracted fiscal crisis. There were ferry services throughout our archipelago that were completely shut down during some of the hardest times for our communities to deal with this unilateral abrogation of the social contract as a direct result of actions that were taken by both the state level, in which Senator Stedman had direct influence on, and on the federal level, in which Representative Young had direct influence on, that purposefully excluded the National Environmental Policy Act and other measures to sideline public participation in the expenditure of public funds which occur within the crisis of a multi-billion-dollar mismanagement of the ability of the state legislatures to provide for a reliable source of revenues sufficient to fund the social contract of public education, public health, social safety net, public transportation, and all of the functions with which civil society depends. It is hard to believe that the reasoning that justifies a $40 million subsistence and recreation road during a protracted state fiscal crisis is justifiable, and I would hope that we could have a near future opportunity in which to address these mind-boggling revocations of the public interest in the interest of continuing business as usual during a global pandemic, and called that essential services. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Beebe. Clerk Thompson, is there anyone else in the queue?
Let me double check 1 second here. There is not, Mayor Jensen.
Okay, Okay, thank you. That will bring us to the next item on today's agenda, item 8, and that's persons to be heard unrelated to today's agenda. Are there any people in the queue for that item, Clerk Thompson?
I do not see any.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to item 9, board, commission, and committee reports. There are none today on the agenda. There are no consent agenda items, so that will bypass. And that brings us to report of other officers. That brings us to the mayor's report.
Pardon me, Mayor Jensen.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Yeah, item 11. Sorry about that. Mr. Hagerman, can you please give an update like Member Michi requested?
Yes, I can, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. So, yeah, just to mention a few things that EOC has been working on. Of course, the airport screening going well in regard to meeting the state's mandate number 10. Sandy Dixon is managing that project for us as the operations chief of the IC, and she's doing a great job. Just some quick numbers for everybody. We started screening on June 6th, and as of the 16th of July, we've screened just a little over 1,000 passengers coming into Petersburg, 1,018. And the hospital started testing not long after that. To date, they have performed 355 tests at the airport, including 261 for tests for incoming passengers and 94 tests for follow-up vouchers. So we're doing the best we can up there, and I think it's working out well. We're meeting our contract with the state. As many people may know, the EOC did distribute a packet of information to visitor industry businesses in Petersburg, and including lodges. Information packets went on the 26th of June and contained lots of information about the state's mandate 10, the health alert, state's health alert 10 regarding face coverings, copies of the travel declaration form issued by the state, and a letter recommending best practices for people coming into the community. We're encouraging all businesses to, in part, encourage their customers that are coming into Petersburg to get tested before arrival. That is the best way for those people that are visiting Petersburg to move about the community without having to go through a strict quarantine. And that has been kind of hit and miss, granted, but overall I think that the visitors coming into Alaska are getting the information that they need to make the right choices for themselves. It's definitely out there on the internet, and we've gotten a lot of calls from travelers ahead of their travel trying to figure out what the best thing is to do. Just a note, a note to the public that if there are any observations around town of groups that highly suspected violating the travel mandate and not quarantining when they should, the one way that the state has offered to handle enforcement is to send an email to investigations@alaska.gov. It's an email address to report suspected activity, and they treat those reports as anonymous, so that anybody can send an email in, a report, and the state will look into that at a later date. The recent backlog, or the overwhelming number of tests being performed in the state and in the nation has really led to a backlog at the commercial labs that Petersburg Medical Center uses, and that has caused some very lengthy turnaround times for local testing. It's an issue that is unacceptable to the hospital and to the EOC, and the hospital is working very hard to shift gears send tests to a different lab or labs from what they have been to try to remedy that problem. And I thought I would mention that real quick. And lastly, as mentioned at the end of the last Assembly meeting, I am working on researching information and developing a protective plan for the community. I hope to have a rough draft to be able to share with the incident command team and the hospital by the end of this week, and we'll move forward as that gets fleshed out. I've gotten some really good leads on plans from other state governments, and some of them are very good, very easy to understand, and so that would be a good model for Petersburg to look at, something that's easy to read, easy to understand, and potentially can be effective as we move through the pandemic, and heaven forbid if we end up in a situation where things are really bad for Petersburg and our hospital. So that's all the report I have, but if there are any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hagerman. Are there any questions from Assembly members for Mr. Hagerman? Okay, hearing none. That brings us now to report of other officers and the mayor's report. As was talked about today on Borough Business on KFSK, she was in the mayor's report to visit with Don Young, and during that visit it was held in the Assembly chambers, and it was myself, Assembly Member Tringley, Assembly Member Lynn, Manager Giesbeck, Senator Stedman, Daniel George, who is Congressman Young's chief of staff, and then the radio. He visited on July 7th. Congressman Young during his visit, he brought up the fact that he doesn't believe that there will be any more stimulus monies that we've been hearing about being kicked around back in Washington, D.C. And that was his take on that. He talked about Southeast Alaska and its potential for resource extraction, mining, all the minerals, logging, etc. Also, the infrastructure needs for our region that could help develop revenue, transportation, better transportation system, and hydroelectricity development in the region. Southeast Alaska has a huge ability for potential hydroelectric development. He said, that he was right. I think there's probably enough power here to power the whole West Coast if you could tap into it all the way up and down through Southeast to the archipelago here. Congress passed a highway bill he didn't give much detail on, but he said it won't have much impact on Alaska. It won't really help not much. And the other things he talked about, Member Lynn, I believe, asked him his thoughts on child care issues, and I can't remember exactly his answer. So if Member Lynn would like to chime in, or Member Trimley, since they were in the room, give their take on the Congressman's visit and his talk, now would be a good time.
Okay. Thank you. Member Trimley, if you want to go ahead, that'd be great.
Yeah, on the child care question, he said, I believe it was, I'm something like, I'm less interested in problems, I'm interested in solutions. And so we talked a little bit about the issues facing the child care providers even before COVID. I went to the meeting because I was interested in bringing the reports I've been hearing from the members of the SHARE Coalition about the exposure of the pretty fragile safety net that's being felt by a lot of members of our community. And so I told him that for whatever it was worth. And what was interesting to me, he was surprised to hear about the supply issue, that it took us about 2 months to get masks for our emergency responders. So I'm interested in continuing a dialogue with him and our other federal representatives, because they are working on legislation right now. I'm interested in hearing from the EOC if there's clearly testing is an issue. Colleagues of Congressman Young have bills addressing the need for contact tracing as well as for the dearth of testing nationwide. So if the EOC has any specific requests going forward, especially as we look into the fall, or also people from our school system, if they could email us issues that they're seeing so we could work on a letter to the federal delegation, that would be great. That was my overall take, was that some overall follow-up, but also making sure to include Senator Sullivan and Murkowski in that conversation would be useful.
Okay, thank you, Member Clinton. Member Lynn, did you have anything you wanted to interject from that visit?
No, I think you did a pretty good job of it. The only other thing that I've said on the radio today, or that from my perspective, is that anything we can do, and this was directed at Congressman Young, that we could, if there was some kind of a stimulus package for improvement of our transportation system in any way, or our infrastructure here in Southeast, that we would certainly we're certainly on board and we'd like to be part of it. And I talked about that on the radio today, and I know that you and all of us are on that wavelength about trying to help our infrastructure.
All right, thank you, too, for your input. One thing, when Member Tremblay touched on this, he said he doesn't want problems, to talk about problems, he wants solutions. I think the way he phrased it was that if you come to him with a problem, he likes it if you have some sort of a solution or the start of a solution for him to work on. So another thing I added to the mayor's report this evening was Alaska Municipal League summer session in-person attendance has been canceled. It will be totally virtual, and more info to come on how to attend that, and it's August 11th through the 13th, I believe, and Mills and Jason will be getting more information to us as time goes on. We're also seeking letters of interest. The Petersburg Borough is seeking letters of interest from qualified borough residents to serve on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board until October 6, 2020 municipal election. There are currently 5 vacant seats, but we have 2 letters of interest that we will address later in the meeting, and I would intend to appoint those if the Assembly approves. But the letters of interest should be sent to Clerk Thompson at the Borough office located at 12 South Nordic Drive, or by sending to Post Office Box 329, Petersburg, Alaska, 99833, or by emailing bthompson@petersburgak.gov. So that completes my mayor's report, and I would ask the manager to give his report.
Mayor Jensen, may I interrupt for just a second?
You sure can.
Thank you. I lost the connection with my list that tells me who is on the phone, but right before I lost it, I believe there was another caller that called in and was hoping they might be able to testify. Are we going to allow that?
I think we should back up and do that, yes.
Okay, thank you. Mario, if you have a caller by the name of Darcy Ewert on the phone, could you please unmute her?
Okay. Hello, Assembly members. This is Darcy Ewert, and I represent myself. We have been coming up for 16 summers in Frederick Point East subdivision. We have a cabin, and we have been paying taxes for Service Area 1 even though there are no services out there. I have to agree with Candy that as I have gotten to know people around Petersburg, very friendly community. That's why we actually bought and are building another house here. The problem is a lot of people don't know where Frederick Point East is actually located. And I'm not sure if everybody on the assembly knows where it is. And so I did get a chance to work with Debbie Thompson, and I enjoyed it very much. We looked into this issue because we wanted to make sure everybody had an idea of where Frederick Point East was located and the history behind it, how this subdivision actually was given to become actually a subdivision. And there was actually things that were promised that there would be services that go along with this. And so we wanted to make sure everybody had the information because this has been going on for too many years and it hasn't been dealt with. And so we thought, okay, let's get everybody the information so we can make a good decision on this for everybody. There are no services out in Frederick Point East. And if people actually know where it's located, I think they would understand why Frederick Point East should be removed from Service Area 1. And if anybody has any questions, please come and talk to me. We have tons of paperwork on this. You heard from Candy. She knows a lot about this. We would really like for people to come and talk to us about this, and it should be removed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. If there are no other callers, I would like to move back to the manager's report.
Mayor Jensen, there is one other caller. I apologize.
Oh, okay. Well, let's, at some point we'll have to stop taking the calls, I suppose, but let's accept this one.
Thank you. Mario, could you please unmute Rebecca Knight?
Hello?
Hi, Becky. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I've got my landline in one ear and my cell phone in the other. I'm not sure which one to drop. So if you're getting feedback, pardon?
The one you're talking on now is very clear.
Oh, both of them. Okay, I got dropped earlier. I'm not calling in late. I just didn't know which line to hang up. Okay.
Whoop, we've lost you.
Oh, okay. It's my cell phone. Then okay. You can hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to hang up my landline. Okay. Okay, back to the business at hand. I'm speaking under items unrelated to the agenda, and because there was confusion earlier about where testimony should be received on this, I was thinking under mayor's report, but apparently that's maybe not an agenda item. I don't know about that. But yeah, I was also concerned about Senator Stedman and Representative Young's unannounced visit to Petersburg. And I know you maybe don't want to answer that now because you don't want to answer questions, but it's a big question to me is what kind of notice you received regarding this visit, and was the meeting recorded, and why was there no public notice? And I assume perhaps there wasn't a quorum, but it would seem to me that having the community there, the constituents there, would be a great idea. And I know there was some supposed concern about Representative Young's scheduling, and they couldn't find a place in his schedule to meet with constituents. But perhaps there was a meeting later on in the day at a private establishment or something where he did. And it would be nice that when these lawmakers come to town, that you encourage them to meet with constituents and not just a select group of people. And in particular, I had a lot of questions to ask about the Cake Road issue. I
I continue to believe that it's a monumental waste of money for a road to nowhere, and I can't go into details in 5 minutes or less, but there's a lot of outstanding questions that should be answered, and both Representative Young and Senator Stedman could shed some light on those issues. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, Mrs. Knight. And we only had 3 assembly members there specifically, so it wouldn't have to be advertised, and that was at the request of Congressman Young. Didn't want to have a public forum at this time, and I don't do a scheduling. I just so that's how we set up that short meeting. Okay, Clerk Thompson, are there any other callers?
There are not. Thank you.
Okay, now we can move forward to the manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Assisted living continues to be on lockdown with no outside visitors other than essential individuals allowed into the building. Big thank you to Dr. Heyer and Dr. Hess, who continue to make house calls and come and see patients at assisted living. Residents and the staff up there continue to be healthy. We take daily temperatures on staff as well as the residents and closely monitor everyone. All sick leave policies are strictly enforced. Southeast Windows did their kind of yearly 5-window replacement at elderly housing in June. We did have a kind of an issue in the North Harbor. A fire line feeder blew off during a training drill. Harbor staff is working with a diver to refashion the main line with new attachments. The library expanded their open hours on July 6th. Current hours are now Tuesday through Friday, 11 to 6 p.m. We've now been open to the public for over a month, and things have been going very well. Staff have found customers to be very respectful of the posted guidelines, requiring face coverings, social distancing, and limiting their time in the facility. Kari Peterson is doing library programming live on KFSK. Tune in Thursdays at 10 for story time and 10:30 for adult programs. We're also offering retirement finance classes via Zoom taught by Sarah Adab Dems and Summer Stream. The library's summer reading program continues until August 11th. The nonprofit and child care stabilization program, as part of the whole COVID response, dispersed $260,000 to local nonprofits and licensed child care providers. 3 child care providers received a total of $45,000. In addition, 16 nonprofits received $215,000 to support their operations. Most indicated they would be using funds to adapt existing programs to align with COVID-19 guidance, provide basic food and housing support to residents in need, or to support operating costs of the organization. The Small Business Association, or SBA, issued a report on the Paycheck Protection loans through June 30th. Nearly 240 Petersburg-based businesses received funding through this program. 6 businesses received loans for more than $150,000, and an additional 233 businesses received loans of less than $150,000 each, totaling $4.425 million. Approximately $2.2 million in loans were awarded to commercial fishing businesses. These loans are forgivable if spent according to the program guidelines, and Congress recently extended the application period to August 8th. Sandy continues to work on COVID-19 related activities, including the airport process for greeting, screening for state travel mandate 10, reviewing workforce mitigation plans for people and businesses who want to come to Petersburg for work, and coordinating with the hospital on offering asymptomatic testing for our first responders. Reed Brothers Construction is progressing well on the Casino Street sewer project. Main line and services are replaced from 3rd Street to 6th Street, with 1 more block to go before wrapping up and developing punch list items for final completion. Staff's been doing a lot at the wastewater plant on chipping the slash and limbs from various power and light line clearing activities and from the drop-off location at 14th Street. The department erected some signage at the 14th Street site to direct the public as to what materials are acceptable at the site. We ask the public to please follow the rules and to take any unacceptable materials to the landfill. There was a system-wide outage on the holiday this year at 3:30 a.m. The July 4th outage was attributed to a likely bird strike in Ketchikan that resulted in a cascading failure event that brought down Ketchikan, Wrangell, and Petersburg. Power was restored in Petersburg within about an hour by the Power and Light staff. Power and Light has been working on the substation refeed project to reroute the feed to 2nd Street so the rotten poles in the Power and Light parking lot and Hammer Slough can be eliminated. To date, the lines have been fed from 2nd Street and terminated at the substation. The new manual sectionalizing switch has been installed on Haugen Drive to break up loads during the restoration activities. Next phases will be to upgrade the feed to Hammer Slough, reprogram the Lumber Street recloser, and remove the lines and poles that cross Hammer Slough. We are looking at quotes in Power and Light for an installation of a taller fence around the Main Street substation. This fence will be 16 feet tall and will include screening material so that it better protects the vital substation transformer. Our hydro lakes are really, really full. Crystal Lake is within 2 feet of spilling. Tyee Lake is within 15 feet of spill, and Swan Lake is about 6 feet up on the splashboards and within 10 feet of spilling. Continued wet weather may cause spilling at all 3 reservoirs by the end of summer. Blind Slough has been generating at 1,700 kWs for the last couple of weeks. With all the wet weather we've been having a difficult time getting our street grading done. The crew is working to keep up with the potholes, and we'll start grading again when weather permits. On the positive side, there's been very little need for dust control measures so far this summer. The motor pool shop repair design consultant with WJE was in town June 24th through the 26th. In addition to an in-depth measurement and evaluation work on the building structure, they did some further evaluation on the overhead crane and determined that full replacement of that item is necessary. This resolves one key area of disagreement between the borough and the insurance provider. WJE is now proceeding with design of building plans and specifications, and we hope to get the project out to bid later this year. I've been working with Stephanie and the school to develop the schedule that we can have public access to the gym, workout rooms, and the pool. One of our big concerns was trying to reduce impact school kids from interacting with the patrons so that we can stop any kind of potential spread and keeping that interaction at a minimum. The Coast Parks and Rec will have use of the majority of facilities from 6 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. and from 6:30 p.m. to close Monday through Friday and all day on Saturday. Stephanie has presented a plan to the incident command team to review, and once that plan is approved, we'll start the process of reopening the Parks and Rec facilities. Wanted to thank everyone involved in the 4th of July planning and implementation. Nowhere near like what we normally do, but folks really worked hard to give the community something, and just a big thank you to all of them that were involved. Parks and Rec is preparing a lifeguard certification class this weekend, and we did get our HVAC system software update for the school, and the community center is now functioning correctly on the borough side. I can't speak for the school, but the consultants came in and got that done. We're recalibrating the chemical feeds and getting ready to put together, again, the schedule and getting once the temperatures and the chemicals are in the proper ranges for the pool. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, Manager Giesbeck. Are there any questions from Assembly members for the manager? I have one, Steve. I mean, the deadline for people to apply for the SBA money is, like you said, August 8th. Is there a contact number at the borough, or who could they contact to get the proper direction where to go to apply if the fishermen or any other businesses are wanted to do that? Would Liz be a good contact?
Mr. Mayor, that's a wonderful question, and yes, Liz has done the lion's share of this work. She's done a great job working with both the applicants as well as the banks involved, and is probably, in my opinion, the most knowledgeable person in town about how this process works, and it will be a big help to anybody that has any questions.
Okay, because I've been asked and had a few phone calls and emails asking that, and that's who I steered people towards, but I wonder if it wouldn't hurt if the borough put out some kind of an announcement, or if we could get KFSK to do that, so it's wider spread, so that doesn't give people much time. It gives them 2.5 weeks to apply it. It's been very beneficial to our community, so I just...
Sure, we can make sure something goes out.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions by any assembly members? Okay, that brings us to item 14, unfinished business. Ordinances for third and final reading. Ordinance 2020-19. This is an ordinance amending Borough Code, Chapter 3.72, to provide for civil emergency provisions. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its third and final reading.
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion is made by Member Nietzsche, seconded by Member Tremblay. That brings it to the floor for discussion. And I have a suggestion I would like to make before we start our comments here. I would propose that we table it till sometime in the fall for the third reading, with hopes, with as controversial as this has been, and people even this evening wanting explanations, and the incident commander wasn't quite clear on one comment in it, and one of the way things were worded. I would suggest we try to do, and I don't know if this would be at all possible, have some kind of a public meeting, if we could find a venue that we could record in, and make all that legitimate, and have social distancing be in effect. And that's just a suggestion. So with that being said, I will open the floor for assembly members to comment.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Just a point of clarification. I'm not going to make this motion, but the appropriate way to do it would be to postpone to a certain time, to postpone to whatever said time, not the table. It's more just the parliamentary language. Right. Floor is whoever wants it. I'll pass for now.
Okay, yeah, postpone to a date sometime if that's the motion, that we can figure out a date if that becomes a discussion item. So, anyone else have any comments?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to postpone it until a further date.
So I think it should be a time specific, and looking at my calendar earlier, in case this was brought up, this would be September 21st is our second meeting in the month, or we could have a special meeting for this meeting only, since it's become controversial and divisive in my opinion. We could have it definitely before the election, which is, I believe, October 6th. So I think we should come up with a specific date.
Yeah, the 21st works for me. That's part of my motion.
Okay, that is the date of our second meeting, and we could do it at that meeting as well. So motion's been made by Member Borough to postpone the third reading of this ordinance 2020-19 until a date certain, September 21st. Is there a second?
Second.
Second's been made by Member Norheim, so there's been a motion and a second to postpone the third reading until September 21st, and that would be a 6 p.m. Meeting. Is there any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Mayor, sure.
Member Stanton-Gregory, you have a comment?
Yeah, I was processing this here at the time, trying to figure out where to go with that, and we've gone through so far first reading, second reading with a public hearing where the public's weighed in. Simply put, I think I'm going to be voting, I'll be voting no on this, because on this ordinance, just to be clear to all members of the public, this doesn't give the borough any more authority, period, than the old city code. And I want to repeat that just to be clear. This gives the borough no more authority the old city code. It just doesn't. Some of the concerns people have voiced today I empathize with, but they're not based on the reality that something is being snuck past or that civil liberties will be infringed upon. I take that part of this role very seriously to make sure that we're not infringing upon anyone's civil rights in our community, and having compared the old city code to this, it's there for the reading. It gives us no more power, and I don't think waiting till September is going to change that. So I'll be voting no to postpone this until September.
Any other discussion on the proposed amendment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I might.
Member Lynn.
Now, I'm still kind of confused about, are you thinking that if we have a special meeting on the 21st specifically for this, I'm trying to figure out the procedures here you're looking at. Are we going to have another call in for comments again? Are we looking at amendments to it at the same meeting? I'm not clear where you're intending to go here.
Well, my comment before we started the testimony here was just to have more time for the public and to absorb this and maybe amend it, yes, and change it, and get buy-in on it. One of the people that emailed in, was Aaron Hankins, and I thought he had a logical idea, was to change it from 7 days to a civil emergency, or the civil, if they call it for an emergency, instead of 7 days, it's 72 hours, and then within the 72 hours, the Assembly would have a meeting to weigh in on the reason for potential lockdown or whatever is asked for.
You're getting. Thank you. You're getting towards where I was, and I read Mr. Hankins' comments on that. I went through this in ad finum detail yesterday, and there's 3 or 4 areas like Mr. Hankins that probably need some review, but if I'm not clear on what I'm trying to get across in my head. Are we going to start over again? Are we going to, how do we take those comments, put them into at the same meeting if you're going to have a meeting and a vote at the same time? I'm not at all clear here.
Well, I guess I don't really have after I try to answer or give you my thought process here, then we'll listen to the rest of the Assembly on this amendment. I just think with as much public concern as there is, we need to have more time to digest it. And I know it's been said by a few Assembly members, and if I'm reading this right, I've got the ordinance in print. It says substantive provisions. Chapter 3.72 of the Petersburg Code shall be amended to read as follows. The language proposed for insertion is in bold and underlined. The language proposed for deletion is in brackets and struck through. And most of the stuff that's struck through is city, changing to borough. I totally agree with that. But the bold and underlined adds 2 more pages that, if I'm reading this right, were in print in the old code. Maybe it's a state statute, but it is not in our municipal code. And so all that other language that's inserted in there, I think, could be what the public might be having trouble digesting, or buying into, I guess, would be a better thing. That's the only explanation I can give you, Member Lynn.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm not arguing at this point. I'm trying to understand where we're headed here. I'm not at all comfortable with the process of just saying we're going to have another meeting, we're going to approve it. If somebody has to lay out a process that we would go through to get there, I'd be very much, in favor of that, not just have another meeting. That doesn't do any good. If you want to have if you would like to have with the borough staff, for instance, a separate meeting where people could call in and get answers to questions they have, or to be able to put, that might be a better way to go at a time with, without a decision. Then you could also, at a later time come back with a possible, some possible amendments you want to make. I'm not at all clear. So I guess unless we can pin it down, I'll probably vote no.
Okay, I guess one way we can do it if the person made an amendment would be to have another public hearing and do that. But anyway, with that being said, I will be quiet, and we're now still on discussion for the amendment to postpone this meeting until September 21st, 6 p.m. And that, there could be an amendment made to that as well.
Can I make a suggestion? No, it's Member Moore.
Pardon me?
It's Member Morrell. I see what Bob's saying, but I just think that there needs to be a time. There's a lot of unanswered questions still that the staff hasn't answered. The public has a lot of questions and concerns, so maybe hold I don't know if there's a work session or something that we can hold that allows community input prior to the September 21st third week. Or I guess I could make an amendment to do another public hearing. But I think that there just needs to be some more questions answered, and things need to be a little bit more cut and dry before we proceed. And there's a lot of dissension, and there's a lot of, people are just up in arms about this. And so I think that we need to think about it before we pass it and push this through. There's a lot of emotions right now. I don't see the urge to rush this. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other comment on the amendment to postpone this third reading until September 21st? That's where we're at.
I have a comment.
Okay, Member Tremblay.
Yeah, I don't think we should be postponing this. We as assembly members have had weeks and weeks to dive into the details, to make amendments if we wish, which maybe we will after this, and to ask questions of the lawyer and the borough attorney and of the staff, which I know I've been basically obsessed with this for the last couple of weeks. I know quite a few of us have been. So I think once we're past this amendment, we'll be able to flesh out some more of those. But as far as timing, remember that we're passing this permanent one because we've been passing temporary ones since March, and we have now passed it three times. Is that correct, Debbie?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so we've passed the temporary emergency ordinance 3 times now, and so we would need to continue to keep passing temporary ordinances until the permanent ordinance, which would probably be basically what we're talking about. It would be the same ordinance that we're voting on today. And so I don't think it's a very efficient use of time, and I don't think it's also, frankly, very responsible for us to talk about getting together in person in the fall, trying to organize a group town hall, where this reality of ours isn't changing here for quite some time. So we're going to be doing call-ins to be responsible for quite a while, and so, maybe we should try to explore Zoom again. I don't know if that feels like that would be more representative for folks, but for those reasons, I don't think that the September delay makes a lot of logical sense. I understand that emotions are really high, but strength of emotion doesn't necessarily mean veracity of argument, and so that, emotions are high for a lot of different reasons, and I think this became a flashpoint, and it has provoked really good conversations and really good attention to detail that I'm very, very grateful for, so we can make sure that we're doing due diligence, but I don't see the delay as a logical conclusion to reach because of it.
Is there any other input on the proposed amendment?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I might, Member Borough, would you be amenable to amending your motion that would include a Zoom work session to answer questions related to this?
No, that I'm full agreement with. I was just throwing out an idea. So yeah, I think that would be a great idea. So how do I go about that? Is that fair enough to just say that you heard it, Debbie, or do I need to actually word it?
No, I can put it together, Andy.
Okay.
Okay, so you don't think we have to amend the amendment to add before this date a work session with probably the attorney involved, and hopefully it can be a Zoom meeting, at least that'd give us something other than a voice. So I don't know, what do you think, Clerk Thompson, since you're the parliamentarian?
Well, I believe that we're still discussing, the original amendment, and I think adding this into the original amendment is fine.
Okay, so how that would be reworded would be to make it so we have some kind of Zoom work session with the public involved and possibly our attorney to answer questions, so that would be added to this amendment then in the language.
Yes, and that would have to happen prior to the September 21st regular assembly meeting, unless you would like to change the date of the postpone to a certain time.
I think that gives us some time, 2 months. Personally, any other comments on this modification or this proposed amendment to ordinance 2020-19?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Member Tremblay. Sorry.
If this happens, this is to Debbie, if this delay were to go into effect, what would we need to do to keep, because of the mandates that we have regarding cruise ship traffic and others are connected to the passing of the temporary emergency ordinances, which would be expired. Would we have to have an emergency meeting tomorrow to create a new emergency, to pass a new emergency ordinance? How would that work if we decide to table this?
Yes, there would be a couple ways to handle it. We would, if you chose to entertain another emergency ordinance for civil emergency provisions, we'd have to have a special meeting right away. Or I could check with the borough attorney and find out what it is that we would need to do to keep the alerts and mandates that are currently in place still in effect. And I would have to get back to the assembly on that.
No, I had the same question since our other one, our third one has expired, I guess. So, any other discussion on this proposed amendment to ordinance 2020-19 with postponement for the third meeting until September 21st at our regular second meeting of that month, and between now and then to schedule hopefully a Zoom public hearing with the attorney involved for public input and maybe some clarification here. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I thought Member Tremblay hit on a good point right there, that as Assembly members, we've been reading, processing, asking questions, getting questions answered over a big chunk of weeks right now, and I fail to see what's going to change between now and September in terms of information given. I've heard from members of the public via phone. I've had coffee on someone's porch this morning talking about the ordinance. Our emails have been flooded with varying different thoughts. I think right now the idea of postponing this feels like we're kicking a can down the road because we want to take, maybe some people don't want to make hard decisions. And this is the third reading for it. We've had a public hearing. I'm I guess disappointed that we're going this direction, but I'll await the vote, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other Assembly members that would like to speak to this proposed amendment?
I have a question about the date.
Pardon me?
This is Assemblymember Tremblay. I have a question about why the meeting in September was chosen. Someone mentioned the election. Is it the intention of that date to be on purpose close to the municipal election? Because to me that feels like an inappropriate use of the delay function on this.
The reason I stated that date before the October 6th election is so the current seated assembly who's been addressing this issue would continue to discuss it and debate it and then vote on it. If we postpone it, that's the only reason that I put the 21st in, and Member Morrell made the motion to move it to that day, the 21st, which happens to be our second meeting of the month. That's the only logic I was using.
Okay, because to me it seems problematic to have it that close to something of that, and also rather pointless. Again, we've been talking about this now for weeks ourselves, and so to me it would be more. It would make more sense to, if we do delay it, shift it to sooner so that we could have, say, a work session next week where we are still all fresh on all of this, and then have the meeting at the next meeting after that, so that we can, again, keep this timely and responsive and not, as Jay said, we've been doing temporary ordinances for months. We've been talking about this specific ordinance for weeks and weeks, so I don't understand why delaying it 2 months instead of the one makes sense.
Well, I would suggest you make an amendment to the amendment to change the date.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to alter the date from September 21st to August 17th.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. So now the amendment has a proposed amendment to it, and to change the date from September 21st to August 17th, and it'd be the same thing with sometime in between this date, within the next 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, whatever the time frame is, we have a work session. So any discussion on the amendment to the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Well, since we just made wild accusations about placing that time close to the election in hopes to, dissuade people from voting for one person or the other, I guess I'll make a wild accusation that you would like to have this on August 17th, so both myself and the mayor cannot be involved because it's hard for us to be there during the summertime, during salmon season.
Point of order. Point of order. That's inappropriate.
Sure that is not what you're doing. Point of order. It's inappropriate. I understand that.
Member Greger, Senator Greger.
I was just calling point of order, Mr. Mayor. I was calling point of order that making accusations like that towards the Assembly is inappropriate. That's all.
Well, I would like to interject that I believe August 17th is also the primary election.
The 18th.
I believe so. 18th? Okay, David. Anyway, move back to the proposed amendment to the amendment to change the date from September 21st to August 17th. Is there any more comment on that, discussion, I should say, on that amendment?
Sure, Mr. Mayor.
Member Mucci.
I don't know how anybody... Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know how anybody at home could be following around what we're doing. I'm sitting in the garage trying to sort it all out. But, as elected officials, we're put in a tough position to have to make tough decisions from time to time. We've all been reading the same letters for the last couple of months about this, that, the other. We've read letters about part of this ordinance, or the ordinance that we're going to vote on has to do with taking away rights. I think we just need to move forward with the original ordinance, get it back up here, and chat about some amendments for going on. I'm not voting in favor of any amendments to postpone this ordinance. We have to do what we think is best, and make those tough decisions. So I'm going to be voting no on whatever amendment we've got going on here. Thank you.
The amendment to the proposed amendment for changing the date is all from the 21st of September till August 17th. Is there any more discussion on this proposed amendment? Okay, if there's none, the clerk call the roll. This is to change the date on the first amendment from the 21st of September to the 17th of August. Clerk, please call the roll.
Jeff?
No.
Jay?
No.
Taylor?
No.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Bob?
Yes.
Randy?
No.
Okay, so the proposed amendment to the first amendment, original amendment, to change the date from September 21st to August 17th fails, with Member Lynn and Member Tremblay in favor, I believe. I might be wrong on the vote there, but so now we're back to the amendment to the main motion on ordinance 2020-19, and this is to postpone this third reading to the September 21st meeting, with in between today and that time a public hearing, preferably a Zoom meeting with the public, the attorney involved, and interested parties. So is there any other discussion on the proposed amendment to postpone the third reading of this ordinance until September 21st, 6 p.m. at that meeting?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Member Norheim?
So, obviously, this has been a little contentious with people, and to discredit that people's emotions are high over this subject and say that we just need to ignore those emotions and move forward after just describing it as a flashpoint and then discrediting those emotions, I think not postponing this would just be adding more fuel to that fire, and I just don't see how that's helpful. I mean, I tallied up the number of emails. Obviously, I've been gone and not talking to people in town. I have 13 for it. I have 19 against. I have 2 that I was unable to determine where they were at on it, and I have 5 to table or postpone. So, if we're going to go for like democracy, which gets touted a lot instead of representative democracy, then if this postponement fails, the numbers say so should this amendment. We should just not do this. And that gets thrown around a lot, is that the people have spoken and that they say that we need to do this thing now. I have disagreements on that in places, but if we don't postpone this, we're going to make a lot of people mad, which I get. Discredit the emotions, sure, okay. But I think it's just irresponsible to just do it when everybody's so mad about it right now. That's all.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Is there any other input on this amendment as proposed?
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Member Stengrader.
Yeah, just to clarify that this is, by wanting to do our borough business and vote on a topic isn't a discrediting of someone's emotions. We can understand where people are coming from and agree or disagree or agree to disagree. That's not about validating or discrediting their emotions. Our job is to take care of the business in front of us, and the emotional isn't about crediting or discrediting someone's emotions. I just wanted to clarify that part.
Okay, thank you. Any other input? Any other comments? So we'll be voting on the proposed amendment to postpone the third reading of ordinance 2020-19 to September 21st, 6 p.m. when the meeting starts, with in between this date and that date, a public hearing hopefully conducted by Zoom and with our attorney in attendance. Seeing no other input.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, what happens if that Zoom meeting doesn't happen?
Then we have a call-in meeting, I would assume, but that's what we can do.
Okay, so do we have a date set up for that, or what are we thinking here? I mean, we're working on September, or whatever date we're working on now. I mean, yeah, I'm just trying to sort out the logistics here.
We have no date chosen. That's the date we'll have to come up with in the very near future if this amendment passes. If the amendment passes, to come up with that proposed public hearing date. It would be great if it was a date where all Assembly members thought they could be in town, and participants could, I guess we're the ones that need to be there if this happens, and the attorney, and we'll just see how it goes. There is no date chosen for that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, the nice part about this meeting here today is that we're all here, so it just gives us an opportunity to participate. Thank you.
That is nice, I agree. Any other comments on this proposed amendment? Clerk, call the roll.
Chelsea?
No.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
No.
Brandy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Nope.
Bob?
Yes.
Okay, the proposed amendment passes with a 4-3 vote with members Tremblay, Leachy, and Stanton Greger in opposition. So that brings us to the main motion as amended. So the clerk, is there any discussion? Or
Can we start to answer some questions on this so that we can start to get into what issues Assembly members have with it so that we can start making amendments now?
I suppose we could, but then I would wonder if it would be better if we just voted for this amendment to postpone this third reading. Maybe that was the last vote we needed. I'd ask for Clerk Thompson's clarification on that. Is it a done deal? This third reading is postponed now because of this vote we just took?
I would agree, Mayor Jensen, that yes, it is, because the main motion was to approve the ordinance in its third and final reading.
Okay, so now we just approved it as amended, so now our next meeting of this meeting is September 21st at 6 p.m.
Correct.
So when will we have our emergency meeting for our emergency ordinance temporarily?
That we'll have to clarify. If I may interject, I believe Ms. Thompson and I will be in town for all day tomorrow, and I could be here the next day as well. If the attorney feels we have to do something immediately tomorrow, we have what, Clerk Thompson, 8 hours notification to the Assembly to have a meeting?
That is correct.
That is something you will work on, I would assume, first thing in the morning, unless, can you reach out to the attorney tonight and advertise for a special meeting this evening? I know it's awful late, but I mean, just so we can get this ball rolling and get the special ordinance passed again, and maybe this time we could pass it until September 21st. If that's allowed.
Yeah, if that's within the 60 days. Yes, I could get a hold of the attorney tonight if you would like, if everyone believes that they would be able to attend a meeting tomorrow afternoon.
I have a phone call between 10:45 and 11:15. That is my only locked out time tomorrow. Sorry. Yes, Member Mickey.
And what's the purpose of the meeting?
The meeting is to extend our civil ordinance emergency ordinance or whatever, however it's termed, because it has expired. And so we have to, yeah. Is that correct, Clerk Thompson?
Yes, that is correct.
Any other input on potential availability for a meeting at some point tomorrow? Anytime other than 10:30 to 11:30, I'm up for any time.
Yeah, I can be available tomorrow as well.
Member Stanton Gregor?
Let's throw out 4 o'clock. Can everyone do 4 o'clock?
Yeah.
I can.
If need be, let's see what Attorney Heidemann says.
Oh, hey, actually, I'm sorry. I just realized we are not under emergency ordinance provisions right now, so we cannot call a meeting within 8 hours. So a special meeting can be called within 24 hours, I believe. Let me go, when I'm done here, let me go read code, make sure we follow directions, and I will email you all this evening. Is that all right?
Good call, Clerk Thompson. That works for me if it works for everybody else, yes.
Yeah, so for clarity, now that we're not reviewing the ordinance, we're passing a temporary ordinance without chance for public input or review because we are letting them expire for the sake of the permanent ordinance, just for clarification.
That is correct.
I believe the prior ordinance, the last emergency ordinance expired on the 17th, 3 days ago.
Okay.
So, okay, Clerk Thompson, if it's all right with the Assembly, maybe you should move that direction, and just I will be in contact with you first thing in the morning.
Sounds good.
Okay. So, we're on to new business. Item 15. This is a resolution number 20-12. It's a resolution 2020-12, a resolution approving the sole source purchase of Taser Axon Body 3 video cameras. I'd entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second. Sorry, I was muted.
Yeah. Okay, any discussion on this? I've looked into this, and I'm normally not one that's in favor of sole source procurements or purchases, but this looks like it's very legitimate, and from listening to the discussion today with Member Nucci and Member Lim on the Borough Business Call-In show, yeah, I'm in full support of this myself. Any other discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Member Norheim, I believe.
Yeah, just given the state of things around the country in general, I think this is probably a really good idea to do. I'll be voting yes on this.
Okay, thank you. Any other input? Clerk, call the roll.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
You bet.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Resolution 2020-12 passes unanimously. That brings us up to item B under new business, which is wash truck purchase. The details on this, Public Works Director Cotta is requesting approval to purchase a 2021 HB 607 SBA water truck to replace the borough's current wash truck. This purchase is included in the approved fiscal year 2021 budget. RWC Group has quoted $134,970.46 for the truck, which is under the approved budget of $140,000. I entertain a motion to approve this purchase.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made with a second to approve the purchase of a new wash truck for the Petersburg Borough. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Okay, the purchase of a new wash truck passes unanimously with a 7-0 vote, and I think it's probably a good purchase because the old red Ford has been around probably since I was in high school. The next item on the agenda is Frederick Point East Properties. Clerk Thompson requests the Assembly decide whether to move forward with an ordinance to bring the question of removal of Frederick Point East from Service Area 1 to the voters for consideration. So we need a motion of some sort to put that on the floor. It has to be in the positive, so I would entertain a motion to bring this question to the voters in October.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Okay, there's been a motion and a second, so discussion on putting this to the voters, I believe, is what we need to do. Is that correct, Clerk Thompson?
It is correct, Mayor Jensen, but I would like to clarify that at this point, if I were to bring the ordinance for its first reading in the first meeting in August, we would need to have a special meeting in August to entertain a second or third reading in order to get all the readings in for this to go before the voters on October 6th of this year.
Okay, so we're behind schedule a little bit for doing it in 3 normally scheduled meetings.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Member Lynn?
Yeah, I have a question for the clerk. And the process, would you kind of describe for the public the process that we would need to go through to put this on the ballot, if you would, please?
Sure. So, first of all, the people who actually live at Frederick Point East will vote a separate ballot, yes or no, and then everyone within Service Area 1 will also vote on the subject separately, and if we do it at the October 6th meeting along with our regular election, that means that we'll have to have 2 separate ballots, 2 separate registers for people to sign, 2 lines, blah, blah, blah. So everyone within Service Area 1 will basically sign 2 registers and get 2 ballots when they head to the ballot box. That is if they want to vote on during both elections.
Sounds confusing.
It is.
Any other...
Yeah, just a follow-up question for the clerk. Would it be possible to do that, just the one to the Frederick and Point East folks by mail at the same time? But then you get into the issue of equality here, too.
Those are questions I will have to ask the attorney. I believe, yes, we could probably do the people that reside at Frederick Point East by mail, especially if that's how they request it. And then that's easy. But I've never done it before either, so it's going to be a learning curve.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
So, Mr. Mayor?
Member Manchin.
Thank you. So we have the one family that lives at Frederick Point East, so they're going to vote on this issue, and then at the same time we have it going to a community-wide vote. Is that correct?
Within Service Area 1 vote, so no one that lives outside of Service Area 1 would vote on this issue.
Okay, and so whether or not, if it passes, then we move forward with it, and if it fails, then the issue is behind us. Is that correct?
Well, at least for the moment, I guess.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I made the motion, I wasn't really intended to have it on the October election. I just, I'm not trying to add more stuff to the city administration's plate. I know they have a lot of other stuff on there, and I'd be amenable to changing that date. But is that something that's going to put a lot of work on your plate to the clerk, or is that something that you feel that we can do? Thank you.
So, Clerk Thompson, if we don't put it on October 6th, if that's the date of our local election ballot, then we'd have to have a special election, which costs $20,000, $30,000, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Well, no, we actually wouldn't have to have a special election unless the Assembly decided they wanted to have a special election. It could also wait till the October ballot in 2021.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. That was my train of thought. So I don't think I will be voted in favor of putting this on this upcoming year's ballot. Excuse me, I have to take a drink of water. Is there any other discussion? If there isn't, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll whether to put this removal of Frederick Point East property from Service Area 1 on this upcoming October election.
Mr. Mayor?
Member Nucci.
Yeah, thank you. I guess this question to the city clerk. If the motion fails here, are we still within our right to kind of change that date to October 2021 here? I don't want this to go away. I want to see some resolution here one way or the other.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. All you're voting on right now is having me bring forward the ordinance to you for 3 readings to put it on the October 6th ballot. So if it's voted down, all it means is I'm not bringing the ordinance before you right now.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion if I could. I'd like to change that date from 2020 to 2021, if I can get a second.
Second that.
Okay, is there any discussion on asking the clerk to put this on the ballot for October of 2021?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Member Nucci.
Yeah, the reason I'm making this amendment is, I want to make sure we have an opportunity to explain to the public what the reasoning is here, and getting some information out there about, what the loss of revenue is going to cost, and how many property owners are out there. I understand a little bit about it. I'm still learning about it every day. But I don't want to rush it through and not give it the time it deserves. I'm not trying to slow this process down, but I think if we're going to do it right, we might as well spend a little bit of time and make sure we give it a good chance of passing. So that's why I wanted to change it to 2021. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Mitchell. Any other discussion on this? And what we will be voting on, is this the amendment, Clerk Thompson, or is this just a vote to put it on the 2021 ballot?
Well, I would say this is an amendment in this case.
Okay, we'll be voting on an amendment to change the date to put this on the 2021 ballot. If there's no other discussion on this amendment, will the clerk please call the roll?
Jay?
No.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, so the amendment passes to change the date from 2020 to 2021 to have the Frederick Point East property put on the ballot for removal from Service Area 1. So now we're voting on the first motion as amended, removing 2020 as the date and moving it to 2021. Is there any discussion on that? Clerk call, is there? Do I hear somebody? Okay, will the clerk call the roll to see if we will have this on the 2021 ballot?
Brandy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Jay?
Okay, nope.
Thank you.
Okay, it passes with a 6-1 vote with member Stan Greger opposed, so that will be, we'll have an ordinance drafted in time to have 3 readings before the 2021 election. That brings us to Petersburg Borough Municipal Election, and Clerk Thompson requests the Assembly decide if the October 6, 2020 Petersburg Borough Municipal Election should be held by mail or in person. I'd entertain a motion of some sort to, in the positive here. So I guess it would have to be to have the election held by mail, or someone make a motion. I can't.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I would move that we hold the election in person.
I second that.
Okay, motion's been made by Member Flynn, seconded by Member Morrell to hold the 2020 Borough Municipal Election in person, and that would also include, I believe, absentee voting, if I'm not mistaken. So anyways, there's discussion.
I'd like the clerk to explain safety procedures that would need to be in place to keep this safe for everyone, including the procedure by which people could request a mail-in ballot for anyone avoiding public at this moment.
Clerk Walker, do you have clarification?
Sure. So I've been thinking a lot about handling the election both ways, just in case. And with an in-person election, I would hope that we would encourage early voting by mail for anyone that would prefer not to come in person. And yes, of course, we will have absentee voting. On election day, I am planning to hold the election in the community gym so that it's a bigger venue than normally, which is usually in the activity room. I have purchased some new voting booths that can be sanitized after every voter. And I have purchased some protection equipment for election officials, face shields and such, and hopefully we will have plexiglass barriers or dividers kind of up. The plan is that everyone will need to social distance. I plan to have markers on the floor of where people should stand. Everything will be very spread out. There will be an indoor, there will be an outdoor. We will have masks available for those that don't have a mask and would like to wear one. I'm not sure what else to go into at that point, but I have been thinking a lot about it.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, if I might?
Member Lynn.
Yes. To the clerk, can we, I like the question that was asked by Member Tremblay, but can we then require masking at that, to be done at the voting?
You know, I don't really believe that we can, Member Lynn, because we don't turn anyone away from voting, and who is going to enforce that? It's probably not going to be me. I think that we would very much appreciate masking, but I will not be sending anyone away.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question?
Member Tremblay.
Yeah, in previous discussions, it was mentioned that approximately 10 out of the 12 poll workers that tend to work are either in, for various reasons, are in at-risk categories. How many people do you think you would need to recruit to work at the polls, and how difficult is it to recruit under normal circumstances?
Thank you, Member Tremblay. That is what I forgot to mention earlier, so thank you for bringing that up. That is the one thing I'm truly worried about. I am worried about having enough election officials. I've struggled on normal years getting enough people there, and I will need more this time due to the sanitizing of pens and the sanitizing of booths and just, hopefully keeping everything running smoothly. So, from my normal crew, I have very few. I believe that I have received only 2 yeses at this point from those who have been election officials in the past. So I will be reaching out to people. I'm going to need the help. There's no way I can do it by myself.
And any other discussion on this motion to hold the municipal elections in public? In person, I should say.
So, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor? Go ahead, Jeff.
Member Stan Yeager?
Sure, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I understand the want to vote in the polls. I always go get my sticker. Given some of the logistical constraints Clerk Thompson has talked about, a fear I've got with in-person voting this fall is that some people may be hesitant to. October is a long ways from now. We won't know the status of what the pandemic's going to be in Petersburg. I hope it is non-existent like it is today, because that feels good. But I'd rather err on the side of caution. I would have definitely voted yes on voting by mail. On the off chance things are less desirable in terms of the virus in Alaska at that point, I would hate to see people not turn out to vote. I'm in favor of anything that gets people to get as many people voting as possible. So I'll be voting no on the in-person voting for the October election.
And I believe Member Mucci, you wanted the floor.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think anything we can do to encourage people to vote is a good thing. I have no problem with people voting in person, but I have no problem with people absentee ballots. But I think, if people want to request a mail-in ballot, I think we should give people every opportunity that we can to be part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Mucci. Is there any other discussion on the motion that's been made to hold municipal elections on October 6th in person?
Yeah, just really quick.
Is that Member Tremblay?
It is, yeah. I'd just like to clarify that around 900 to 1,000 people congregate in one area on an average election day, and that is not at all what current health protocols are calling for, and it's why events are continuing to be canceled around the country. And so I'll be voting no on this, and I encourage any people who would feel comfortable working in an election to reach out to Debbie as soon as possible if this passes, so that we can begin to train, because that's going to be a lot of new workforce. And I'm worried about the, that needed to be said out loud. Encouraging people to meet in person in this larger number is counter to current health and safety recommendations. So I'll be voting no.
Okay, is there any other input? If not, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll. And the motion is to hold the October 6th municipal election in person. It also would allow mail-in and absentee voting. Clerk, call the roll.
Bob?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Jay?
No.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
No.
Mark?
Yes.
Chelsea?
No.
Okay, the motion to hold the municipal election in Petersburg in October in person passes with a 4-3 vote with members Stanton, Greger, Nucci, and Tremblay in opposition. That brings us to the next item on today's agenda, and that's letters of interest for the Parks and Rec Advisory Board that we're trying to start. Cindy has received 2 letters of interest, one from Melina Marvin and the other one from Stephanie Hayes for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. So that means if this, I would like to appoint these people and thank them for putting their name forward for this. And that means we have, if this passes, if the Assembly accepts this, we have 3 more vacant seats, and we need 1 more person to constitute a quorum since it's only a 5-person board. So I would ask for approval from the Assembly on these requests for appointment. So all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you to you for putting your names in. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, that's communications. And there are many correspondences received since the publishing of the July 15, 2020 Assembly meeting packet for today's meeting. So that is on the Borough's website. People can get on there and read that. The Assembly, that brings us to the next item, item 17, Assembly discussion items. There are none listed today. So that brings us to Assembly member comments. Are there any comments by any Assembly members?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead.
Member Lamb, and I believe Member Tremblay.
Yeah. I want to talk about 2 things. I'm still bothered with the special meeting we have related to 2019. I think that has to have some kind of upfront presentation of what it is, where it comes from, how it's there, before you get into the point of taking testimony or however you want to set it up. And the reason I say that is I read all the comments, and there's things on there saying everything from no masking to the fact that we're violating everybody's rights. I mean, across the board. So I think you got to frame what that is. That's an emergency ordinance for the future. Anyhow, my point being is that I think it needs to be some kind of presentation before you get into taking testimony or however you decide to set it up. Thank you. And the last point I'd like to make is since I'm not up for election, I'll volunteer Kirk Thompson if I'm trainable, to be one of your election workers.
Thank you.
Okay, any other Assembly member comments? Member Tremblay, I thought I heard your voice.
Yes, that was me. I'm the same. I'm still thinking about the emergency ordinance and the fact that now we have to pass a temporary emergency ordinance that won't get any public input because we failed to pass the 3rd reading. So the irony of that cannot be lost on this moment. I'm thinking of bringing it up, having the emergency ordinance listed as a discussion item every single meeting between now and then so that we can nail down what exact questions and amendments Assembly members may be having towards it, because I haven't heard any been presented in the 3 meetings where we've been talking about it necessarily. I guess we've had the one from Assembly member Lynn. So I plan on bringing it forward as often as possible because apparently there were questions, and clearly there were a lot of comments from the public. They definitely span quite a spectrum, and some of them were in really good faith that did provoke a lot of really good deep reading of state statute and of consideration of what contingencies, emergencies need to have in place. And so look forward to our special meeting, hopefully soon, and so that we can pass our temporary emergency ordinance and keep the mandates in place, and look forward to continuing discussion.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other Assembly members that have comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Member Norheim, is that you?
Yeah. I would just encourage people to look at what the incident command structure is. It seems to be that, like Member Wayne said, not most. Several people don't understand what it is or why it's in place, and I also understand that I believe it was Paul who said that this particular thing is pretty much supposed to be used in emergency situations, obviously, but that a pandemic like we're dealing with right now is a whole other thing because it's been 6 months or thereabouts. And normally these things would be in place for, maybe a week, and then that would be it, and we get back to doing other things, and this is a little different, and I understand the contention around that. But go through, look at it, understand the incident command structure. I think we should, or if I can be there, to have this brought up so we can nail down these things, the problems, and to the public, your questions. Send all the questions, not just the, I disagree with this because of this or that. We need your input and your questions on why specific things so that we can fix, if it needs to be fixed, and craft it in a way that is acceptable to most people. And that's all I got on that.
Any other Assembly members have comments they would like to put forward this evening? Okay, hearing none, recognitions, and we got an email today from our harbor master, and I wasn't aware that the class of 2020 donated the money they had left in their piggy bank and their budget to the Borough for carts. And I guess they have their logo on it or their class, and I would like to recognize them for doing that. That was a very nice gesture and good use of their funds. Any other recognitions? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Very good. Okay, we all want to adjourn. All right, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.